Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and the start of my 12 Days of Christmas Challenge. What I'm hoping to do over the next 12 days is cover 12 different topics, 12 different lists essentially, starting today with my top 12 dungeon crawlers. Tomorrow we'll hear about my top 11 deck builders, and I'm going to work my way down through the 12 Days of Christmas, covering various topics in the board game world. And until we get to Christmas, where I will cover a single topic for the partridge in the pear tree. So hopefully this is just kind of shares with you guys some thoughts on some of my favorite board games for the year, and is really just meant to be for fun. So again, today's list is going to represent the 12 drummers drumming, and we're going to cover the my 12 favorite dungeon crawlers, which is one of my, if not my favorite genre, my favorite mechanic in board games. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at number 12, and that is Cthulhu Death May Die. The things I love the most about Cthulhu Death May Die is its modularity. It's very much pick a boss, pick your characters, and then you pick like the scenario. And the box was very organized right off the bat, with little tuck boxes, and everything was just very smooth. But this one is very over the top. It's very much out of the realm of what could be a possibility, even though it seems to be set in reality. It's very much over the top, which can make it fun. You're almost like wanting to take terror, wanting to take damage in some cases to increase yourself. You get more powerful as you get crazier type of thing. So it definitely is in that Cthulhu style universe. So if that is a theme you're interested in, this would definitely be a dungeon crawler I recommend. It's very quick and easy to get to the table because of the modularity. It's basically like pick out this deck, and your characters, and go. And the production value is really good. It's a CMON game, so the miniatures are amazing. Highly recommend Cthulhu Death May Die. You can see some of these crazier pictures, but it is lay out the map style dungeon crawler, but the mechanics are very fresh, and it doesn't feel, each scenario feels different from the next, so it doesn't feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over again, running in, smacking people around, moving on to the next room, killing a bunch of monsters. For me, this isn't a theme that is as big on my list, and hence why it has fallen off. But yeah, other than that, it's a great dungeon crawler, especially if you enjoyed the theme. So that was my number 12, Cthulhu Death May Die. All right, coming in at number 11 is Masmorra Dungeons of Arcadia. I'm going to go ahead and a little spoiler alert of my own list. Arcadia Quest is not on this list. Masmorra is my preferred dungeon crawler in the Arcadia universe, and I think for several reasons, one of which is the chibi style miniatures, which they have then turned around and implemented in Marvel United. But I really love the chibi style miniatures, which is the Arcadia Quest universe, but the simplisticness of let me see if I can find here a good picture of somebody having it laid out and what it would look like. The simplistic nature of it really is just like this progressively built dungeon, and also that the only miniatures in the game are your heroes. And I love miniatures, but I also have a ton of miniatures, so I'm perfectly fine with the whole dice monster mechanic, where essentially you enter a room. If there's a monster that needs to be spawned, you roll a specific die, and that die has 6 different monsters on its sides, and all the stats you need are on the die. There's also reference cards you can reference for keywords and things like that, but everything you need to know is on that die face, and so then the monster just is a die that's placed on the board. And I think that's a really smart mechanic, a really great way to cut down on the sheer amount of plastic in your game. I love Zombicide, and I'm going to talk about it here in a little bit, but I don't always need, 100 plus zombie miniatures in my game to have fun. Another mechanic that I really like about Masmorra Dungeons of Arcadia, and why this one sits higher than the other Arcadia games, in my opinion, is the whole action selection mechanic, and that comes from you rolling your dice. You roll these dice out. You can see them right here. This one is to attack, but you see some feet, and you always have this foot token that you can spend. Whatever your dice roll is, that's what you use to take your actions for that round, and you can re-roll them to a certain degree, but really it's like you roll out your dice and then you have to decide what you want to do based on what the die faces are. So it really is a little bit more of a puzzle element as opposed to just, all right, I know my turn's coming up, I know I'm going to move, and I know I'm going to attack. You can do a lot more things on your turn, or you can beef up all your turn, and just do one big attack. It really doesn't matter. But again, it's a very simple, quick, and easy upgrade system for your characters. Basically, they have these built-in cards that you are upgrading. You can see them coming out of the top of this character here, Algus. And just in general, it's a really refreshing take on the dungeon crawler, and it's not campaign style, it's not episodic. It's really just sit down, you want to knock out a fun dungeon crawler in a single setting, this one is for you. All right, so that was number 11. Number 10 on the list is Descent: Journeys in the Dark, second edition. And when I think of dungeon crawlers, this is what I harken back to. For me, this is the preeminent dungeon crawler that got me into the hobby. This is one of the games that got me into board gaming and just opened my eyes to what dungeon crawlers could be, what games were like with miniatures. And I collected a lot of stuff for Descent Second Edition. I loved all of the the various expansions. I loved all the different characters and the skill trees and things like that, and upgrading my characters. I loved just chucking dice. I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day. You move up to a monster and you chuck a certain number of dice based on the weapon you have, and those dice are going to give you your range and your attack power and things like that. At the end of the day, Descent Second Edition for me got a little mundane. It basically became every scenario was work your way through this dungeon, run up to a monster, hit it as quickly as you can, move on to the next room, run up to that monster, hit it as quickly as you can. There wasn't a whole lot of variety in the game, and so when Descent Legends of the Dark came out, I made the tough decision to sell off my Journeys in the Dark collection, simply because I felt like I did not need multiple Descent games in my life. I am not the type of person who holds on to games forever. So, this was one of the games that I thought I would never sell because I had amassed such a nice collection of it. But again, if you are haven't experienced Descent yet and are looking for what is considered the classic dungeon crawler or one of the classic dungeon crawlers, I would highly recommend going out. You can still find copies of these new on Amazon, things like that. Local game stores, they're still producing, to my knowledge, Descent Second Edition. So highly recommend this if you're looking for just your very straightforward, typical fantasy tropes dungeon crawler. Descent Second Edition has got you covered. Now, number 9, I believe this is number 9, is Descent Legends of the Dark. This one got a bump from its predecessor, because this is not Descent Third Edition, for several reasons. I really like the 3D terrain. I really like the cardboard terrain. I had as much fun putting that terrain together as I did playing the game. I also really like the app integration. I think that the app covers so many things that just make quality of life playing this game so much nicer, and it allows you to have these percentage increases with add-ons to your weapon that the math just would not be possible if you had to sit there and do the math yourself, or the just randomness of whether a hit goes through or it misses and things like that. I really like that it's all covered in the app, and so really all I have to focus on is the the setting with the miniatures and the 3D terrain, and then my few character cards in front of me. The reason why this isn't higher on the list is really a few of the mechanics just didn't hit for me. One of those is the fatigue mechanic and the flipping of the card mechanic. I thought that was going to really blow me away and be a specific emphasis on strategy. But it really just didn't hit for me. Some people really love it, and some people use it a lot. But for me, I really just felt like one side of the card was always better than the other, and I really rarely flipped it only to get rid of all the fatigue off of it. Another thing is I feel like they have not quite used the app to its the best of its ability. I feel like there's still a lot of mundaneness, that the scenario still really came down to run up to a monster, hit him as much as you can. You basically just run up to each other and you're just going to stand toe-to-toe and attack each other unless you're a ranged character, but eventually it's just going to be this back and forth attacking until the room is cleared of monsters, and then you move around, you do a few things. But there was so much possibility in having the monsters and the enemy AI move around the board more, do more fancy things, and really work your brain more in strategy of defeating these enemies. But they didn't do that. The enemies still feel like the same basic setup that I could run without a app, just with a set of instructions. The nicest thing about this game easily is the miniatures. Super high quality plastic. They're very light, incredibly detailed. So if you are looking for a game where you're really into the miniature painting and really want some high quality miniatures for a dungeon crawler, then I would definitely check this game out. Again, I'm getting rather picky in my complaints here, so take that as it may. Again, there's all this 3D terrain, but you can see some of the paint jobs on here are just incredible because the miniatures are top notch in quality. So that is Descent Legends of the Dark. And moving on, we have Alter Quest. Now, Alter Quest is a game by Blacklist Games, and it's essentially a retheme of Hero Quest, which for many people was the quintessential dungeon crawler when they were a kid. Has been around forever and actually just got reprinted. I never got into Hero Quest. I never had a copy, never knew anyone that had a copy. I didn't get into dungeon crawlers until I was an adult board gamer. And so I'd always heard so much about Hero Quest. I was very intrigued by Alter Quest. And I think it does a great job of setting up that kind of one-off modularity, start anywhere in the dungeon. You basically just, whatever room you want to walk into, that's the next room where the next stuff is going to be. And so I think they really do a great job, again, with the modularity in this game. That's like, you pick your hero, here's a hero deck. You pick a scenario, here's your scenario deck. You pick a villain and a boss, and you can mix and match all of those. But it's very quick to just decide, all right, this is what I'm going to do, boom, 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 and sit down and play a game. I appreciate that this is not meant to be a campaign style game. There is a campaign that came with the stretch goals and Ruins of Arkenspire box you can see there. So if you are interested in playing a campaign, it's available, but I really like the one-off nature. Sometimes I get exhausted by campaign play and the pressure to finish a campaign and keep playing through these larger campaigns. Another mechanic that is similar to Arcadia Quest is the exploding dice mechanic. So you could keep just rolling these explosion symbols, keep getting successes. Actually, I think this is the exploding symbol. I really like that. There's the element dice that you roll, and that tells you what kind of elements are in the room that you can use your magic for. You're going to re-roll those, or you can manipulate those, but your magic may not always be available to be used. But also the I lost my mouse here. What in the world? Uh-oh. Did I lose? I see it, but it's not moving. There we go. All right. Also, the like 3D terrain, miniature style terrain is really nice, especially painted up. It really adds to the atmosphere of the game. So if you were looking for something that is great, it's just card play basically. Hand management, deck management, getting your cards out, spending your points to play them down and have them accessible, and then exhausting them to take your actions, things like that. And there is some dice rolling involved. But if you're looking for a great modular style dungeon crawler that is just some really great one-off scenarios, I would check out Alter Quest. All right, next up on the list is Zombicide Black Plague. I really like Zombicide in general, just for its just pure dice chucking, go slay some, hack and slash, go kill as many zombies as you can. The game does not take itself too seriously. Here you can see some really like nicely done setups from some people. But the miniatures are okay. They're not the best CMON miniatures out there. And again, you're going to end up with a ton of these zombie miniatures, hundreds in the box. Now, I know that they have come out with various versions of Zombicide since Black Plague. But Black Plague and Green Horde, I like the theme the best. I'm perfectly fine with the mechanics. There are some mechanics that they have improved, and I simply just implement those improved rules into my Black Plague version. But I have the most content for Black Plague, and none of the other versions, even second edition, really took for me. When I compared them, I was like, if I'm going to play Zombicide, I'd really rather just sit down and play Black Plague versus second edition or Invader. So this is just really a personal preference for me because I enjoy the theme, and I already have a nice collection of this particular series. But Zombicide in general is always the same game. It is, run around with your weapons. The better your weapons, the more dice you get to roll. You're trying to get successes, and each success you basically are taking out any number of zombies. And for every zombie, your kill count goes up, and as your kill count goes up, your character upgrades. But it also means that the spawn of the zombies is going to be more intense as you become more powerful. So it scales really well throughout the scenarios. They're not really campaign style. There's a little bit of linearity, but I don't sit down and play 10 games of Zombicide all in a row. I'll sit down once, play a game or two, set it away, bring it back out a couple months later. But anyways, this is a classic hack and slash, dice chucking. You're rolling a lot of dice. You're just looking for successes. Taking out zombies left and right, kill counts galore. If that is something you'd be interested, then I would highly recommend Zombicide, any of the Zombicides. But if you prefer the more fantasy tropes, Zombicide Black Plague. If you prefer space, Zombicide Invader. If you prefer kind of more real life setting, Zombicide 2nd Edition. So there you go. And Zombicide Dead or Alive is set to come out next year. So if you're into the Western theme, then check that one out when it comes out. All right, next up is Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. Now, this is part of Fantasy Flight's series of dungeon crawlers. And what they did was they took that descent system and made it more app-driven. So this is like a step between Legends of the Dark, Descent Legends of the Dark, and like Descent 2nd Edition, which originally did not have an app to it. But they put all of the damaging of monsters and the hits and all that stuff, calculation of hits and everything else into the app. So it's really nice to not have to pull out the little damage tokens and track that kind of stuff. That's all done in the app. And, the whole Fog of War thing where they show you a small piece of the map and then they kind of show you where you should kind of head to adventure, but you don't know where the map is going to take you or how big it's going to be until you start playing through the scenarios. There are also the smaller scenarios that are more on these battle mats. These are much more tight. These are basically going to be battles as opposed to adventuring, things like that, but there's terrain, and it's not 3D or anything like that. It's just cardboard tokens. Some people have pimped out their version. But you can interact with the terrain, like fire up and over walls, knock down pillars, things like that. And so I really liked the whole, here's the overworld look, more exploration, some fighting, and then here's the battle mats. Here's, very strategic combat happening here. Also, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth implemented this card system, and these are not the cards. Here we go. So these are some of the cards. These all have the same fate symbol on them, but essentially when you take, say, a weapon here, and here's your Grief Bearer axe. Take this, for example, and there's this specific symbol here with the horn. Now your character is going to have, let's see if we can find any shots of the character sheets here. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, here's one. Your character is going to have might. Bilbo has 2 might, so that's not his best. He would not be wielding that giant axe, which makes sense. But say he found a weapon that used wit, and so he's going to get to draw 4 cards from his character deck, and he's looking for these success symbols. This is actually a great picture to show off all this stuff. He also can have accumulated these fate tokens through various exploration and things like that, which he can turn into successes. But then you're looking for successes as you come across these, because you can see here on this axe, 1 success can be turned into 2 hits and add the lethal keyword onto it, or you can use 2 hits and sunder keyword, or if you get 3 successes, you're hitting it for 9 hits. That would, if you can figure out a way, if you had 2 fate tokens in that example and had drawn those 3 cards, and spent them to turn them into hits, you are crushing just about anything in your path. But what's even more built into the strategy is that you're going to be able to scout some of these cards, to look at them and either place them on the top or bottom of the deck, but you're also at certain times going to be able to pull these cards out of your deck and prepare them in front of you, and that's when you get to use the text beneath them, which is going to help you mitigate your tests, heal, give you extra actions, things like that. But those are the ones that you want to prepare are usually the ones with the best success symbols on them. So do you pull a success out of your deck to be able to prepare that card, or do you keep it in your deck so you hope to draw it later? Just that whole strategy I really appreciated. It was very fresh take on how you go about skill tests and attacks in the game and using your weapons, as opposed to dice rolling. There is no dice in this game. So if you are looking for something that is much more card driven, where you're preparing this personal little deck of yours and how you manage that deck, and it's all card based and no dice, there's still the luck of what, you're still shuffling up that deck and drawing randomly from the top, but you can prepare the top a little bit. So if you're looking for something that isn't so much of a dice chucker, that has this unique card driven mechanic, or if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, this is a no-brainer for your dungeon crawler experience, because this is a great, really, the theme really comes through in this game. So that was Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. All right, up next is Nemesis. Some people really don't think of this as a dungeon crawler. It's very much a survival game, but it has those dungeon crawler aspects where you're working your way through, in this game, in this version, a ship, and you're exploring the tiles, and you're dealing with monsters. But again, this one is very, I'm curious as to what this picture is showing off here. Okay, that's everything that comes in the base box all laid out. All right, that's pretty intense. But what Nemesis does so well, let me just trying to find a picture here of it all laid out in a better setup of how you might come across it. Really just the sense of fear and almost anxiety of walking into the next room and hoping you don't find an alien, and what alien might pop out, and what are you going to find, and there's several ways you can complete your goal. But the sense of fear that this game instills in you as you're playing is just incredible, in my opinion. The anxiety of going from room to room and not wanting to leave a room because you're in here, you're safe, and when you move from room to room, you make noise, and making noise could bring out the aliens, and oh my god, I don't want them to come out. There's not a ton of fighting in this game because the aliens really... They're aliens. They will kick your ass if you try and go toe-to-toe with them. And you can take out some aliens, but you're probably not taking out that Queen Mother right there. If she comes out, your ass is running. And so it really just does such a great job of taking what it is not. It is not Aliens, the movie, the board game. It is its own IP, but if you enjoy that genre, if you are an Aliens fan, this is a no-brainer. Also, again, this one is not meant to be episodic. There is some little mini like comic book expansions you can purchase that has a storyline to it, and you're going to be playing cooperative. This is one where you can play cooperative, you can play solo, you can play competitive, and the competitive is very cutthroat, because a lot of the times your goal is to like kill the other people and be the only survivor. And so you're running around trying to sabotage the ship and then get off on the escape pod all by yourself. And so definitely cutthroat. I particularly don't like to play competitive just because it is very cutthroat, and people in my game group aren't always ready for that. But again, the theme really comes through in this. I love it. It actually plays quite fast. If you're playing solo, and you are familiar with the rules and you don't have to refresh your rules, you can just sit down and play. It actually plays quite quickly. So again, can't say enough about this one. A new version, Nemesis Lockdown, will be coming out next year, and that one is set on like a Mars base on Mars. But again, same thing, aliens. This you found this laboratory / base on Mars, and it's like all dark and dreary and shutting down, and are you gonna get stuck in the elevator, things like that. So Nemesis, highly recommend this one. All right, next up is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. This is, again, part of this whole Fantasy Flight line of dungeon crawlers where they really have kind of cornered the market, hit the nail on the head of, these app-driven dungeon crawlers. And Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition was the first one that they said, we're going to use the app. They took Mansions of Madness, which formerly had to have someone be the overlord and, running the monsters, running the puzzles, and deciding how the monsters were going to attack and what comes next. And what they did was took the overlord completely out of the game. Nobody can be the overlord, and it's all in the app. And what is so nice and refreshing about Mansions of Madness is it is not a hack and slash game. It is a puzzle solving game. It is all about the puzzles and solving the mysteries, and so the theme, again, really comes through. So if you are interested in a dungeon crawl-esque game where you're miniatures and you're moving around the board and you're choosing the actions you're going to take, but you don't want either that typical fantasy trope or you don't want a lot of hacking and slashing and killing, this is the game for you. The miniatures are okay. They are definitely some of Fantasy Flight's earlier miniatures. So if you're looking for amazing miniatures, I would look somewhere else. But again, if you're looking for something that is very much, you're solving a mystery, you're solving puzzles, it's not all about just attack, then I would look towards Mansions of Madness. And that's why this one is so high on my list, because it is so different than the rest. It's very refreshing to sit down and play this versus sometimes sitting down and playing a game like Descent. So, again, if you're wanting something that's more mystery, more puzzle solving, then I would definitely check out Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. All right, next up on my list, and please remember that this is my list. This is not your list. But for me, Star Wars Imperial Assault, at least for right now, is one of those games that is a forever game on my shelf. And that is strictly because of the theme. Star Wars Imperial Assault was the game that got me into the hobby. I actually acquired Descent 2nd Edition and Star Wars Imperial Assault at the same time. I was really interested in these miniature games, and I couldn't decide, do I want fantasy? Do I want Star Wars? I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You can see that every single Star Wars Christmas shirt that I own is Star Wars related, and so this one was like a no-brainer purchase for me. And what they did here was they took the Descent 2nd Edition mechanics and they just improved them a little and slapped the Star Wars theme on it. So it is like a build out the map. It is a lot of run in and shoot or, strike them down with the lightsaber. But for me, it's the theme. For me, and I know that there are a ton of diehard Star Wars fans out there. And so if you want the Star Wars experience, And in that dungeon crawler mechanic where you're moving specific characters around, Star Wars Rebellion, everyone says, is Star Wars in a box, and I agree. But that one is much more zoomed out. This is moving, entire units around planets and, big overarching strategy. This one is much more focused on specific ground-based battles and ground-based missions. And so for me, this one is just so high up on the list purely because of the theme. And I still love Star Wars Imperial Assault is what I have the biggest collection of because of the theme, because I want all that Star Wars content. And for me, I still love just the classic sitting down, chucking some dice, chasing people around as a Jedi, just, running away from Darth Vader, knocking out stormtroopers. It just never gets old, in my opinion. And unless Fantasy Flight comes out with a Star Wars Imperial Assault 2nd Edition and blows me out of the water with it, this is going to be a forever game in my collection. Again, purely because of the theme. Classic dungeon crawler with a Star Wars theme. Enough said. All right, number 2 on my list, and this may come as a shock to some people, but it is Gloomhaven. And again, Gloomhaven is, for many people, the quintessential dungeon crawler, and it did. It broke, so many records. It sits atop number 1 in every category it is part of, and there's so many great things about Gloomhaven here. I'm trying to find some good pictures if you're actually not familiar with Gloomhaven, but it is a completely cooperative game. There's nobody that has to run the AI. The monsters are all run by a very, pretty standard, straightforward system. But there's so much content in this box. And technically Gloomhaven, this also covers Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. So if you're wanting something that you need to be taught a little bit about the Gloomhaven universe, or want more of a stepping stones to the Gloomhaven universe, then I would check out Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, which you can see advertised right here. Much smaller price point, smaller box, just less of everything, but does a better job of introducing you to everything. But what really makes Gloomhaven stand out above the rest is the card play mechanic, where your the hand management of playing the cards, that's your initiative, having to pick a top and bottom of each card, and exhausting those cards, and then when you rest, you get them back, but you're always losing one. So if you're burning cards quickly, you're going to exhaust and not be able to finish the scenario faster. But really then just the character progression is so amazing in this game, where part of the excitement of this game is reaching that next XP level where you get to unlock that next set of cards and, changing your deck a little bit more. You can only take a certain number of cards into each scenario, so deciding which cards you're going to take. And then unlocking characters, retiring a character and unlocking a new character, or starting a new character that you have unlocked via side missions or side quests, is like the biggest event in the game, and so checking out that new character, if you are strong-willed enough to leave them in the box and not look at anything but the symbol, and unlocking this character for the first time, being like, ooh, look at this guy, he's so amazing, I love everything about him, and then upgrading that character, and then eventually getting to the point where you retire that character. The crawling through the dungeon and hacking and slashing monsters is really only half of this game. The reason why this one is not number 1 for me is the story is there. It's a big, huge, episodic, campaign-driven style dungeon crawler, but just the story was a little disconnected. Now, to my credit, it took my brother-in-law and I 3 years to play through Gloomhaven. COVID didn't help that. And so there were long periods of stretches where we were forgetting what exactly was happening in this universe. But the story was good, but not amazing. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, my number 1 dungeon crawler and number 1 recommendation, it's not cheap, but there is a lot of content in this box, is Madara, Unintentional Malum, Act 1. They're coming out with Act 2 and Act 3. You can see it's in this coffin-style box. It rivals Gloomhaven in size and content. There's more cards in this box, less standees, more miniatures, less terrain tile. But, what's really some of the things that I appreciate about Madara more over Gloomhaven is the tile setup. The tiles are they're all square. So setting up a scenario is much more simple. Also, the tiles with the spot UV stuff are just, they jump out at you more. The terrain looks more amazing. The Gloomhaven terrain was very dull. Everything kind of looked the same. Also, the story in this one, like I said, the Gloomhaven story was okay, but it wasn't meant to be the main part of the game. This one, you almost feel like they wanted to tell this story, and then they decided, how do we want to have people play through parts of the story, play through the action scenes? Ooh, let's do a dungeon-style crawl game. There is a lot of text. You can see this is the narrative book here, and at least half of it is just text that you're reading through. Now, I play Madara using the Foreteller app. It is free to download, and the Madara portions, the chapters, are free to download. So there's no reason why you shouldn't listen to the narrative portions of this game like an audiobook. And I just sit there and relax and listen to the story like I'm listening to an audiobook. And the story is just so engaging. I feel like I am watching some kind of HBO Max miniseries when, and I'm visualizing these characters because I can see them. I've got the pictures. I've taken my time to paint up these miniatures. The miniatures are okay. They're really like unique in style and design. They're not quite there in quality. They're not like as nice as the Descent Legends of the Dark quality. A lot of times you see like this picture of Nightingale here. Well, that's not what her pose is necessarily. There's this like wolf-like creature with these crazy tails, and it's got like a knife for a tail and all this intricate paintwork on it. When you see the picture of it, you're like, man, this thing is impressive. And when you see the miniature, it's like all curled up around its tail, and it's, you know, very just like small and diminutive. And it really just, I feel like they didn't quite match the pictures, the artwork, with when they did the miniatures and the sculpting. But again, a painted miniature is better than a gray plastic miniature, no matter what shape it is. So, but again, just this story. If you are looking for a game that you really want to become engaged in the story and just be blown away by, the story it tells and the narrative content. Also, the gameplay is very engaging. Now, this is a very heavy dungeon crawler. There's a lot of rules to this game. The rule book is like 80 pages, and it's like a big square rule book. I'm still referencing it. I still have to reread it occasionally. It's very hard to just sit down and play this game after having taken a break. But again, with all those rules comes incredible depth of strategy and build-outs of your characters, and how do you spend your actions each turn, and do you save one or two so you can do a bigger turn next time. But again, the story with Madara, it's an anime, Japanese style anime feel to the story. It's a little bit of a teenage angst drama in it, but if you're into that theme, or if you really want a game where the story is the most important aspect for you, then I would definitely check out Madara. It's not cheap, so review it before you take that leap. But I promise you, if you do take that leap, you will not be disappointed in this game. And so that's why this one is my number one dungeon crawler as of right now, as of 2021. That's going to do it for my 12 Drummers Drumming Christmas challenge. And again, tomorrow we'll be covering my top 11 deck builders. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to be notified when all of my 12 Days of Christmas Challenges videos drop on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that bell icon so you can be notified when I put a video up on the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.